Good morning. I'd like to speak to us this morning from the theme, HIV Stigma Kills. It is a sad, tragic reality that we may well find a cure for AIDS before we find a cure for the stigma of AIDS. The cure for AIDS is a chemistry problem. The cure for stigma is a human problem. AIDS still kills, more slowly now, and people are able to live full, meaningful, and long lives. But HIV stigma also kills, sometimes slowly, by the disregard, the isolation, the shunning, the discrimination, the segregation, but sometimes quickly, sometimes violently. I had to stop reading all the internet stories of how many intimate partners were killed, murdered, when their partner discovered that they had AIDS or were HIV positive. Men killing women, women killing men, lovers killing lovers. So sometimes quickly, violently, without warning. But HIV stigma kills both when it is disclosed, sometimes just the very knowledge that someone's HIV positive can provoke a violent reaction. But it also kills when the stigma upon the person who is HIV positive is so heavy, and in order to avoid all the consequences, that they don't disclose. And when they don't disclose, that stigma kills their sexual partners with whom they may engage without their knowing. Stigma, fueled by hatred and fear, ignorance. Stigma provokes the scorn not only of a person, but of a whole people. We might be able to stand up to one bully, but when the whole culture is against us, it becomes overwhelming. I was drawn to this story in John's Gospel because it has similar elements to what we confront today. See, the story in John's Gospel is not just the healing of a blind man. There are many stories in the Gospels where Jesus heals someone and they just go on their merry way. But this story is elaborated by the Gospel writer to make yet another, and I suggest to you, more profound point. It is also the healing of this man's stigma, a stigma that continued to affect him even after he was healed. This definition of stigma is a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person. And so we find that the culture in which the blind man lived stigmatized him because of his condition. Listen to their question. Who sinned that this man was born blind? Illness, difference was associated with divine disfavor. If you were born without sight or born with other ability, without fully developed limbs. What did you do to deserve your fate? Was the first question that the culture would ask and assume. You must have done something to deserve that condition being imposed upon you. Why do we do that? We do that to find some distinction between ourselves and that person so that we don't have to feel subject or vulnerable to the same condition that they find themselves. We want to figure out some way, some psychological way that we can distance ourselves from their circumstance. You must have done something to deserve it. I'm not like you, and so I don't have to worry. That was the culture 2,000 years ago. And it covered so many mysterious things, because everything was mysterious, because we didn't know what even caused a cold. But again, in the 1980s, when AIDS was at the beginning of its epidemic stage, it seems that civilization had a cultural relapse. And once again, an illness, in this case, HIV and AIDS, was associated with divine disfavor. How many preachers from how many pulpits condemned those who were HIV positive and had AIDS with the wrath of their God? But this story illustrates how stigma can take on a life of its own. See, after Jesus heals him, the community still refuses to accept the miracle. The stigma sticks even after the blindness leaves. It's as though the blindness left him and fell on them. They were blinded to the person standing in front of them because to them, he would always be the blind beggar. They could not allow him to be someone new. They could not allow him to be someone different. They had created their comfort zone where they knew who he was and he was over there, and they knew who they were and they were over here. But now, healed of his blindness, he wants to walk among them. Even though he was healed, the stigma of his life before the healing continued to alienate him from his neighbors and his community. But the question, the initial question, and Jesus' response is key. It's enlightening for how Jesus related to this assumed divine disfavor. They asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned? This man or his parents that he should be born blind?" I submit to you that we could rephrase that question. People are still asking, who sinned? You or your mother that you should be born with HIV? Jesus responded, "Neither this man nor his parents did anything wrong." That's the wrong question. The right question and the real answer is, how can we respond to this man in a way that shows God's greatness? How can we respond to this man in his circumstance in a way that shows God's love and shows God's mercy? That's the right question. And the right answer? We should be doing the works of God while it is light and not condemning innocent persons. We should not be seeking out persons to blame, but we should be seeking out persons to heal. There are not many among us who are qualified to find the chemical cure for AIDS and HIV. Not many of us are research scientists. How many research scientists here today? But all of us and each of us can do something to find a cure for stigma. Because we're all experts in stigma. Because we've practiced it all our lives. And so we can look within ourselves to find the cure. All of us are qualified to show love to our HIV positive brothers and sisters. All of us are qualified to show acceptance to our HIV positive brothers and sisters. All of us are qualified to show compassion. All of us are qualified to heal the stigma of HIV. We can refuse to give in to the hate, to give in to the hysteria. We can build communities, neighborhoods, workplaces, and worship spaces, just like we have here at Pilgrim with our HIV declaration, that this is a community that welcomes all persons regardless of their HIV status. We can build worship spaces. We can build a culture of inclusion. And that requires an effort and an intention on the part of each of us gathered here today and wherever we find ourselves to express that culture of inclusion. And Jesus says, now is the time. And now is the time for us. Now is the time when HIV positive people will live longer and healthier lives. The only thing remaining, the only thing separating them from a whole, healthy life will be the remaining stigma. When we do the work to heal the stigma, remembering that stigma kills, but when we do our work, we can kill the stigma. When we do this work, Jesus says we are doing the work of God. So let us continue on Tuesday night at 6:30 to create a community of inclusion, of hope, and love. And one of the most magical moments on our World AIDS Day vigils is to hear from those who stand at this pulpit and say to us, I am HIV positive. And they share their story, and they share their lives with us. It is a moment of grace that they give to us. And I invite you to come and to do the work of God and just be a part of a community that will end the stigma. Let the people of God say, amen.